1949, I was beginning my career as a humble clerk at the Norwich Union in Surrey Street. I was just around coming up about 18, but at that time when we were living, and at that age, we were always aware we were going to be called for national service. This was where all young men, once they achieved the age of 18, were called up for national service. At that stage, it was only 18 months, but that did change during my 18 months in. And we were to either serve in the Royal Air Force, the RAF, or the Army. Very few ever got in the Navy, but the RAF and the Army were the two main outlets. We were aware of our first beckoning of here when an envelope fell through your door at your home address, OHMS on His Majesty's service. And that was inviting you to attend a medical to see if you were fit and well to go in to serve under King George VI. So you see where the king came from, King George VI at that stage. And where we were called for a medical was not very far from here. It was a very cold building just down the road in Coolgate, and I understand it's still there today. We shivered, we shook, because I was called there about March time, just after my 18th birthday, and my big remembrance of that was I had to see the doctor. I was getting on fine. He said, "I'll have to have a sample of your urine, Mr. Hurren." Called me Mr., which I duly obliged, and he looked at it with some disdain. He said, "Do you like beetroot?" I said, "I love beetroot." But he said, you've been eating quite a bit, haven't you? Well, I said, we had a nice salad last night, Sunday night tea, as you did in those days, the best you could. I don't know if there was any salmon or nice York ham went with it, but Dad had a fair old supply of vegetables, and of course beetroot was one of the main consistencies. Well, apparently if you eat like a lot of beetroot, that makes your pee go pinky, reddy colour. So I've never forgot that. Anyway, so I got through, I passed the medical. I was passed A4, G1. Now A4 was for aircrew, and that wasn't a very good rating. My problem was I was colourblind. So I was A4, G1, ground, you were passed for ground duties as a class 1 person. Boys on the day didn't pass their medical. They didn't pass them at all. They were flat feet or some terrible thing had befallen them, but they didn't have to do national service. So at any rate, I went home for the day, I carried on my employment, but of course within a month or two after that, you knew you were going to get another envelope, OHMS, and of course that duly fell through the door, I think it was late April time, inviting me to join the Royal Air Force, and I was to attend a training establishment at Padgate. Any of you ever heard of Padgate? No. Padgate in Lancashire, just outside Manchester, Warrington and so forth. Now I remember we were told just to bring a small attache case or a bag, you know, with a shaving kit in, your toothbrush, a spare pair of socks and all this, that and the other, because you would soon be changing into the colours of the Royal Air Force, blue. At any rate, I remember my father bringing me up from Mattershall to Thorpe Station on the day I was supposed to go to Padgate, and straight away on Thorpe Station you met other lads, unbeknown to me, but some became very good friends, unbeknown to me at that stage, who were on our way to Padgate. And we changed again at Crewe, and that was only about a half an hour's trip, then down to Warrington Station. And there life began in earnest, because there was these drill corporals and sergeants with their buckled up hats, absolute creases in their trousers you could shave on, and boots you would have to wear sunglasses if you not, you were taken aback by the shine and so forth. And they tried to get us into some line to walk from Padgate Station to the camp. We were a rabble. Nobody, we might as well have had 2 left feet, 2 right feet, no feet whatsoever. But we managed to get there. First night we settled down. Nobody slept that night. Nobody slept at all, because they were all cracking jokes and all this, that and the other. but the next morning came very, very quickly. Now I remember there being one of these corporals out came into our billet, you know, wakey wakey, or words to that effect, not the same meaning, but we knew what he meant. And we got into line, we had our first RAF breakfast, which I remember wasn't too bad, And then the hastening of all the business to get you kitted out. One of the first things we had to do was to have the obligatory RAF short baton sides. Now they absolutely used to shear you, which is a popular demand today. Young men, don't you? You see, they've all got bald heads. But it was rather a warm day. I did have my hair cut a day or two before we went, and I didn't have to suffer the RAF haircut, so I got away with that. That was fine. The next thing was, I remember we had to stand in front of a camera with a board in front of us. What was on that board? Our service number. Mine was 24745887. And you never forget your service number whatsoever. More so the last three of your service number, which you had to use to get your pay once a week and so forth. So that was fine, we got away with that. Then we had to have another medical. Now remember there's a famous medical which incurred injections, which is called the ship test. You had to hold out both wrists, you got one in there, and you were just recovering for that, and another one go in there. Boy, oh boy, I've been frightened of the needle ever since, I tell you, boy. Talk about going to heaven and back. But that was some medical requirement and this, that and the other. You were then kitted out with all your obligatory equipment, best blue, working blue, boots, shoes, all ill-fitting, and you parcelled up your own civvy clothes in a nice neat parcel. You sent them back to Mum and Dad at Massachusetts here in Norfolk, and they duly arrived. And but we were now fully fledged, we all looked the same and so forth. The next thing was, we were all kitted out, and where were we being sent to do our, quote, square bashing, unquote. This is where they did learn you to march and fire a rifle and so forth. And I noticed on the list that went up, we would go to Henlow in Bedfordshire, just outside Hitchin, Henlow in Bedfordshire. And I remember leaving Padgate, we had to go to Manchester to get the main train, and they marched us through Manchester to go to a local nappy establishment, something like that, to get some refreshment. Well, when we marched through, we were in uniform. The cotton trade, which was Lancashire, it was the woolen trade, the other side of the Pennines in Yorkshire, all the mill girls were out. Didn't they take their mickey at us, something terrible. What a rabble we must have seen. But we did that, and we had some refreshment, went on the train down to Hitchin, and went on to Henlow. In between Hitchin and Henlow is Cardington, the famous place where the old airships are, what they've got, the remains of yesteryear and so forth. And then over the course of the next 8 weeks, we did run literally everywhere. You did everything at the double, absolutely. And we were quite good at marching in the end, and it had its benefits on the very last day when we passed out. They did ask for volunteers for various sporting things. Did you play cricket in summertime or tennis? But if you said yes, normally you had to mow the wicket or roll the wicket and get everything else. But I did have 1 or 2 good games of cricket. I could wheel the cricket bat quite well. The only trouble was, you got behind in the you had to shine up all your buttons on your uniform and polish your boots so you could see to shave in them and so forth. But the time went very quickly, and we were quite a good outfit. And over the days after that, they came what we call a passing out parade. We had the central band of the Royal Air Force there, and you were proud to march past the band. Mum and Dad were there with my younger brother and saw me pass out and so forth. Now I think after that 8 weeks, where we did everything at the double, that was the fittest I've ever been. The fittest I've ever been. I don't think I can get around now around a golf course okay without no ill effect. But boy, weren't we fit. We were lean and hungry in those days. But then the next great thing, where were we going to be posted? You could be posted overseas to Egypt, to Singapore, or you could go finish up at Cottishall or St Faith's in just outside Norwich. It was a full RAF station then. I was posted to a place called Bircham, Newton. I'd never heard of Bircham, Newton before, despite being a Norfolk boy all of my 18 plus years at that stage. And we looked up on a map. It was an RAF station, a First World War RAF station. They had bombers there in the First World War. No concrete strip runways, but a grass strip. And it was just up in North Norfolk between King's Lynn and Hunstanton, a little bit inland from there. And Bircham Newton was a well-known place in World War II, in World War I rather. And anyway, we were given 7 days leave to get, after our strenuous 8 weeks. And then Dad drove me up after my leave to Bircham Newton. It was a god-forsaken place to get to, let alone to get home from, for weekends and so forth. And it's still there today, all the buildings and that, but it's used as a government training establishment. And that was to be my home at that stage for the next 18 months. I settled in very quickly. I was elected to be a clerk, which I was doing clerical work at the Norwich Union. And I became the clerk to the station adjutant. And he was a good old boy, Flight Lieutenant Blount his name was, B-L-O-U-N-T. And he made me very welcome and all this, that and the other. The camp itself was an officers' advanced training establishment, where all the officers came in from all around and so forth, and to do various secretarial jobs or accountancy and everything else like that. And I quite enjoyed it. I learned to type at 40 words a minute. If you could type at 40 words a minute, you got an extra shilling a day. 5p in today's currency, an extra shilling a day. Because at that stage, I was only on 4 shillings a day. And I remember my first payday at Padgate was £1 note, £1 note. It was to increase quite significantly over the next year or so. At any rate, so for typing, I can still type with my eyes shut, 2-finger jack, the Royal Air Force School of Administration, Bircham Newton. I still type that with my eyes shut. So I settled down into that very, very quickly. I took various trade tests. I went from AC Plonk, AC2, to Aircraftsman 1. I then became a leading aircraftsman, LAC. I took an advanced clerical paper, and I became a senior aircraftsman. That's where you had 3 propellers. And for my last 6 months in the RAF, I did get 2 stripes on my arm. I became a corporal. That was a corporal that actually paid and so forth. And as I said, I was in the old orderly room, and we were a good bunch in there. Once a week in the billet, we used to have the what we called a bull night. This is where you had to shine up everything pristine. You put the old mansion polish on the floor, and you put strips of carpet under your feet, and you shuffled up and down like that to bring up a glorious shine, etc., and so forth. You had to get all your kit laid out lovely and so forth, because the old CO would come round next morning and woe behold if anything was wrong. Our camp commander was Group Captain G.R. Montgomery. He was a great character, and his service number was 27110. 27110. So he'd been around in the RAF much longer than ever I had, 2474587. And I formed a good relationship with him. He did eventually retire before I did. Well, the bull night used to go by, and we used to get past with pristine, being in good condition. And old Bernard Montgomery used to come in the billet, and when he left in the billet to join another one the other side, he'd jump to see if there was any dust on top of the loudspeaker, the wakey call in the mornings. And we knew he did that, so we always made sure that had a duster over on bull night and so forth. But anyway, on this particular occasion, he took off, but he slipped and he kept running. He got through the next billet much quicker than he expected. He never tried that trick anymore whatsoever. But one of these bull nights, I made a capture behind my cabinet where I stored all my clothes in, a lovely big Spalia, Septimus, He had a span big as the palm of my hand. And I thought I can have a bit of fun with him tomorrow morning, because we had another corporal in the station orderly room. Johnny Barrett, his name was. He was dead scared of spiders. Anyway, I put him in a matchbox overnight. I pierced a hole in the top so the poor little beggar could breathe. And we went down to station headquarters the next morning with Septimus in a matchbox in my pocket. Well, we were some way from the Nappy, and the Sally Ann wagon used to come round. That's the Salvation Army wagon, where we could get tea, mugs of tea, coffee, cheese rolls, etc., etc. And Johnny went out to get his, and I got the box out, and I tipped Septimus out on the middle of his desk. Well, he come back, he saw this spider there, he went off like a rocket. He absolutely did. He was petrified. And station headquarters was in uproar. At that time, the deputy camp commander was a squadron leader, Ray Turner, and he come up and he opened the orderly room door. He said, I don't know what all the laughter and jolliment is, but has that silly bugger Hurren been up to his tricks again? That was yours truly. I used to get home nearly every weekend. One of the best ways I ever got home was when the Americans were building Skullthorpe. There's an auxiliary airfield in, because things were not looking too good in Europe and elsewhere in the world at that time. And we used to get to Skullthorpe on a local bus, and they used to bring us all the way home. They never charged us a penny and so forth. Dear old Dad used to always transport me back. So I had no trouble getting back. The old Ford 8 BPX 347. I even remember the registration number. And never let me down once. And I had to go to the local doctor, and a little bit, you know, I was naughty. He gave me a certificate. I couldn't travel back on the Monday as usual. If not, I'd have been locked up in Jankers and so forth. Anyway, so no problem getting home. Well, I say the first year had ticked by now, or nearly by. But towards the end of the first winter, there was problems in Korea. The Korea crisis broke out, and what they'd done, as far as national service, they slapped 6 months on our national service. So instead of going in and doing 18 months, we finished up doing 2 years. But another problem was the officers on our camp who were pilots had to get in 4 hours flying a month. And the only aircraft we had at Bircham was a biplane, a 2-wing job, Tiger Moth. One sit in front, one sit in the back. They had to get 4 hours compulsory flying in a month to keep them in trim in case this crisis broke out even further. Well, at any rate, that system went well with the officers. Some of the men on the camp thought it would be a good idea to offer all and sundry a trip in a Tiger Moth, because there was a seat at the front and a seat at the rear. And I put my name down, and eventually my turn came round. Never thought it was going to happen. And I remember the Sally Ann wagon came to the station headquarters before I went. I had my usual cheese roll and cup of coffee, went out to the airfield. There was a little bit of a delay. Sally Ann wagon comes round. Of course, I then had 2 more cheese rolls and a cup of coffee, so the old tummy's quite full, you know. And eventually it came my time. I boarded the aircraft, and we took off across the grass strip. Wonderful sensation. First time I had ever flown at all. And I thought, this is wonderful. Mind you, I've flown in aircraft a few hours since, too long at times. And it was fine the first 10 minutes, but all of a sudden we were over the coast around Brancaster on Stanton Way, and the old aircraft was hitting these areas. We were going, so the topic was going, and oh dear, I knew what was going to happen. I was going to be bilious. I was going to be, you know, absolutely have a good sickie. I remember that, you know, there's nothing you can do to stop it. I remember sort of filling up my handkerchief, and that went over the side, so one of my pristine handkerchiefs flew into the ground somewhere in Norfolk. But then it all came on again. So I was out over the side, and the old pilot was looking out that side. He was in the back seat. He got full blast, you know, and there was nothing I could do about it. It was a horrendous feeling. But touch wood, I've never had that had that feeling, all the commercial flying I've done the last 50 years or so. So we eventually landed. The aircraft was unrecognisable, and I was given time off from my station headquarters duties to make the aircraft pristine condition, and she looked wonderful. So my first ever flying experience, thanks to the RAF, was one I shall never forget. Super. But thankfully the career, I think some boys, national service boys who joined the army, did come unstuck out in career and so forth. But thankfully that was as close as I got involved. Well, life is ticking on now, and because what happened, we'd been increased to 2 years. So there was no getting out demobbed after you'd done 18 months. But the great benefit of it was that winter, nobody moved into the billet, nobody moved out, because there was no movement whatsoever at all, because there wasn't sort of positions for them to become available. And it was very comfortable, and we did enjoy life. I remember we used to play cards. We were not allowed to play for money, and we used to play with matchsticks. And you counted up the matchsticks at the end of the evening, worth about a penny a go. If you had 20 or 30 matchsticks, that was worth a jolly good nappy supper. About £0.50. You used to get double egg, ham, chips, roll, cup of coffee. £0.50. Can you imagine it today, and so forth? We used to go to Hunston, they call it. The locals call it Hunston. I think we all around here call it Hunstanton. There was a famous sort of thing like the old Samson Hercules up the road called the Kit Kat. Lovely sort of place for a dance on a Saturday night and so forth. And on this particular occasion, we all went there in force. We used to get a double-decker bus full from Bircham, and we had 1 or 2 Scots in the camp, and they used to like the sherbet and knock it back left, right and centre. And on this particular occasion, one Scotch boy, he was gone completely. I remember he got on the top step of this double-decker, and he wouldn't let anybody come up, because he stood there, he urinated all over them as they came up the stairs. Well, he was, the military police came in the end, and he was slapped inside, and he eventually, had to go to court-martial. And I remember he was given 6 months in a corrective training establishment at Colchester, and after that he was discharged. Well, we're now into the 2nd year, and time seems to go very, very quickly then. But on the 6th of February 1952, a big event in my life, as far as I was concerned, in connection with the royal family, did occur. On the 6th of February 1952, King George VI died in his sleep at Sandringham. Now, Sandringham from Bircham Newton was only about 5 miles up the road, and we played a big part in the initial start of King George VI's funeral on that particular days that followed. We were chosen, I was one among chosen, to act as a guard of honour at various stages on his route from Sandringham House to Wolferton Station, from Sandringham House to Wolferton Station. And his body was drawn on a gun carriage with horses and taken down to Wolferton, and my guard of honour duties were outside Wolferton Station. And he was then, the coffin was taken on the train, and he went by a steam engine, puff puff, from Wolferton to King's Lynn, and King's Lynn by Ely down to King's Cross, and everything followed on from that. Well, us who were selected, boy, I thought I was back square bashing. On the particular morning, first parade was at 6 o'clock, and if your boots weren't satisfactory, you had to get down and shine them again. Breakfast was at 7 o'clock, and we were in our position out at, I was passing it around afterward, at Wolferton by 8 o'clock in the morning. I think we stood there for 3 hours before the ceremony did start. But I did feel honoured to be on that occasion. So now King George VI, I served under a king, he's gone, and of course Queen Elizabeth, as we know her today, is still there. And eventually May 1952 comes along to when I am to be demobbed and so forth. I remember going around, you had to get sort of clearance from every sort of unit, the library on the camp or anything else for that matter. And I remember I had a demob party. I had about 20 boys or 20 young men, and we went to the King's Head at Bircham, down the road, and we called at this place last year. My wife and I had a meal, and I recounted to her all what I've virtually told you this afternoon and so forth. I remember we had chicken, all nice vegetables and all that, and ice cream. That cost me 10 shillings and sixpence a head. 10 and sixpence a head. But that was just great. I remember Father coming on the day I did leave camp. We got the old bicycle to get home. He strapped that on the back, and away we went and so forth. I had to bring all my uniform away because there were still problems in case we got called up as a reserve. And my first married quarters was a flat 92-94 St Giles, the top of St Giles. And I remember going down Grapes Hill. There was a second-hand shop at the bottom. I sold all my uniform, all my equipment for £1. So that was great memories. £1 my first payday, £1 for getting rid of the kit. So I was glad I did my national service. I wish in some way I'd sign on as a regular, because some people have made a very good livelihood from that. And I doubt if I shall ever get called up no more. But the hue and cry is a lot of people in this country would like to see national service called back again. But I think that's light years away. So thank you very much for all your attention.